To call the meeting to order. Roll call, Councilmember Harris. Here. Councilmember Jeruso. Councilmember King. Councilmember Green.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas. We do not have a quorum.
Okay, we'll vote on minutes later. But good afternoon, everyone. As Councilmember Green said, this is a good news sort of meeting, and I'm happy to see so many of you out here. This is the first Quality of Life Committee meeting for 2023, and I thought it was important to show and start this new year with a refresh and refocused look at community revitalization efforts across New Orleans. So we have several organizations and the city here to talk about all kinds of things that will enhance our quality of life in New Orleans. So why don't we start with the first agenda item, the third agenda item?
This is Culture of Cleanliness campaign with the presentation on the campaign's 2022 accomplishments and goals for 2023.
I need a number three, the projects, the stormwater management.
Sorry, my agenda.
Okay.
It's a different one. Okay, we have the PDU stormwater and green infrastructure brief. Yeah, presentation on the upcoming green infrastructure projects with Erica Bower, manager at the PDU stormwater and green infrastructure.
Hello, guys.
I can use this. I think it's this one. I can use this. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you can. I can use this. I can use this one. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Green. It's good seeing you again. We are here today to brief on the status of our stormwater projects across the city. I have with me my director of hazard mitigation and green infrastructure, Mary Kincaid. And one thing I wanted to say before Mary gets started, naturally, we were kind of on a pause until we clean up some of those open construction sites out there. And all of this is in coordination and timing with all our departments, Parks and Parkways, DPW, capital projects, and collaboration with Sewer and Water Board. And most of these projects are at 90 or 100% that Mary is going to talk about in design. And we'll move forward, but naturally we'll come back to the committee and to the Public Works Committee and give you a heads up and, coordinate the time for construction of some of these projects. But we won't start without you. So with that, without further ado, Mary, you can start your briefing.
Thank you, sir. So here today, we actually have quite a few projects to present to you. So we're going to try to move as quickly as possible and be mindful of the time. We're going to be presenting you today about our hazard mitigation projects, those projects funded by HUD. And then we have future projects that we're doing with our GOMESA and stormwater bond. So to talk about our current status of hazard mitigation, these are Katrina Rita grants. We do have new funding available coming from IDA. If you look at the map, we had a couple of projects that did not make the required benefit cost analysis. That was Academy Park and Algiers. Specifically today, we were asked to talk a good bit about Broadmoor, but as you can see, looking at the map, the initial HMGP program for Katrina Rita was intended to be comprehensive and throughout the community. And so we've learned a couple of lessons on how to achieve those benefit cost analyses that are required to move forward, that we think that we can move forward with projects in Algiers and New Orleans East in the future, which was what we had to take off the table for hazard mitigation. To move into Broadmoor, also known as Drainage Pump Station 1. So this is an interesting project that benefits Broadmoor, but doesn't necessarily, the construction doesn't take place in Broadmoor, hence the name Drainage Pump Station 1. This is a project that combines both parks, green intersections, streets, conventional drainage upgrades, and then also green infrastructure such as above ground storage, underground storage, and permeable paving. It's a little bit more closer look at how the watershed itself functions. Everything kind of drains down to DPSO 1. So it's important to us that we store and stop water as close to the river as possible. And that benefits our lower lying communities. This project being, it's not just comprehensive in scale, it's also holding 12.9 million gallons of stormwater. We're talking about really significant reductions in flooding to the lower lying areas. And it also benefits citywide for people that have flood insurance, because anytime we finish a project like this, we get points in what's called the community rating system. That one is currently waiting environmental clearance, and we're looking to go into construction in Q3 of 2023, pending getting that final clearance from FEMA. A lot of questions, a lot of interest in the Saratoga site. So wanted to show you what the final Saratoga site is going to look like. And so this is going to be a stormwater storage park that will function in both a wet and a dry condition. No standing water after 48 hours. Just this little park alone holds 75,000 cubic feet of stormwater storage. And you can see the serpentine walking path there. So the point of the serpentine walking path is that the landscape architects on the contract, they designed this so that someone walking through the park, that it matches the tempo of a closer walk to thee. So we're honoring the use of the parcels around it that are historic cemeteries, being mindful of the legacy. Now, we did have to go ahead and remediate Saratoga prior to starting the FEMA project because HMGP funds do not cover remediation costs. So this is a project that the city had to do on its own. This was a 19th century incinerator. We'll show you a little bit more about that in the next slide. So you can see here an overlay of the previous use of the site when it was historically an incinerator, and then overlaid over the future use. So we have here, this was from the excavation, basically everything that was on that site that was contaminated based upon the soil testing that we had done was removed and disposed of in a safe manner. We then filed the records of the excavation with LDEQ. We had followed the corrective action plan that they had approved. And so now what we're doing now is working on a conveyance that will close that out. We'll get a no further action letter from LDEQ. We'll provide that to FEMA, and that's the last piece to move forward with environmental clearance for the entire project. Because it was a incinerator, the types of contaminants there are not, they were lead and some volatile organic compounds, but not forever chemicals, not PFAS and some of the other things that we're familiar with these days. We also have Van McMurray Park. So Van McMurray Park, we're going to be doing something with subsurface storage. Subsurface storage allows us to maintain the future use of this site. So by doing subsurface storage, you can see that in the future, it could still be used as a play space. It can be used in many different ways and still work with the community. And subsurface storage is very cost effective when compared to this price of upsizing traditional drainage pipes. Now, Barone Street, I'm going to take you through what I mean when I say something works, in a number of different scenarios. So here on Barone Street, we're doing stormwater storage underneath the roadway. And we're not doing this with the modular storage like we are on Saratoga. We're doing it with 57 gravel, which allows any utilities or any stormwater or any water things that come in there that need to access a line that is under this, that they can just replace that with a simple 57 rock that's very accessible. They don't have to worry about disturbing any modular storage. So again, preserving all future use for the city and for the residents. So let me show you how this works. So we have here how much the stormwater storage of the street would fill up in a 1/2 inch, a 1 inch, 2 inch, 2.5, and a 3 inch storm. So you can see, you can actually get a pretty intense storm before you even start to get flooding in the street. So the storage that we're adding here on Barone is significant. Oak Park is one of our projects that we're starting construction on this quarter. We're starting that on February 27th. And this is a project where we had some NORA lots that were adjacent to each other. We're doing stormwater storage and a modular underground storage that again allows that future use. This is combined with some green infrastructure improvements to the adjacent street. It's coordinated with the JIRR work on Perlia Street. And so we're really looking forward to what's going to happen in this neighborhood. And you can see here, when we talk about the benefit cost analysis, so we recently updated all of these to FEMA's latest Module 6. And this little project alone is going to save $11.1 million in future anticipated flooding claims over the life of the project. So say over a 40-year project life, this is $11.1 million in flooding damage to structures that would not happen. That doesn't even get into the disruption of kids getting off buses and the street is flooded, or people trying to get to a medical appointment and the street is flooded and maybe they have skin conditions that they can't walk through water like that. So these, even a small project has significant impact. St. Roch is another project that we're going to start this quarter. This one combines some traditional drainage pipe upgrades with some green infrastructure. We have permeable parking lanes. And this is one that is going to prevent almost $50 million in future damage to structures. And we're going to be adding street trees as well, which I think you'll be hearing from Sola later on how important those street trees can be. I do have a few other HMGP projects to talk about. However, they're combined with some of our MDR projects, so I'm going to address them in the NDR scope. So when I say NDR, National Disaster Resilience Competition was a competitive grant that was done by HUD, and the city proposed to create what was called the Gentilly Resilience District. I've got this slide up just to show you that, you know, we're not necessarily just talking about capital projects. There's also some significant research and planning efforts underway to make sure that this district, you know, has a long-term impact for the city that's beneficial. And then we also have some work from the Arts Council that helps us bring public art to the community. And then also will be helping us honor the historic value of the Pontchartrain Park neighborhood. So looking at these projects in context, you can see what we mean by the Gentilly Resilience District. We're pretty much covering the entire area with these urban water projects. And also we're looping these in with mobility improvements, such as walking paths and biking lanes, curb bump outs to improve pedestrian visibility, and so on. One of our projects that combines both hazard mitigation and NDR funds is Mirabu. So this project is currently right now undergoing some plan revision to match some changes on the streets. And we're looking to go into construction on that HMGP portion in the second quarter of 2023. We're also starting design on the NDR portion. What the difference between these two portions is HMGP only funds things that are directly related to stormwater management. So a lot of the stormwater management, almost all of the stormwater management features are being put in with the HMGP funds. The NDR funds allow us to come back in and add educational buildings, community gathering spaces, public art, educational signage, things that are value added, and really take it from a stormwater feature to a park and a neighborhood experience. Another project that combines HMGP and NDR is what we call Pontilly, where we did stormwater management improvements to both the Pontchartrain Park and Gentilly Woods neighborhoods. Quite a few types of enhancements, as you can see here, you know, from permeable parking to stormwater lots, rather large bioswale in Joe Bartholomew Golf Course. And then that project is completely done. We're already seeing stormwater reduction benefits to the neighborhood from this project being complete. And we're coming along in the NDR phase, which is starting design. And we're going to be turning Dwyer Canal into a linear park. And we're adding a pedestrian bridge over Dwyer Canal that will connect these neighborhoods, as well as providing them a community gathering space. This is one of the sections that I'm talking about where public art added to that linear canal linear park can really honor the historic nature of Pontchartrain Park and give people a destination to come and learn about Pontchartrain Park, in addition to the historic designation that Pontchartrain Park received in the last few years. And so that HMGP project, as you can see, stored almost 9 million gallons of storm water being spread out. Blue and Green Corridors is a very transformative project where we're going to transform the neutral ground of Elysian Fields into a community gathering space and into a circulating water body. So this will be, again, a space that functions in both the wet and dry scenario. Some of the spaces along Elysian Fields have steps that go down to the water surface. Those steps can function as community gathering spaces. They can also allow people to experience water. It has a small pump to keep the water circulating. So we add a nice sound feature. We're adding a multifunction space at our city lots. And we also have adult workout spaces, a walking path, shade structures, hundreds of new trees, and a children's play area. This also comes along with striping and changes along Elysian Fields to improve biking and pedestrian safety. So you may notice that I'm talking about some other things. Now we're not talking about just stormwater management, but we're also talking about those additional benefits of community cohesion. So HUD's grant does allow us to fund things that are not just directly related to stormwater management. So we can bring in shade structures, we can bring in walking paths, we can bring in community gathering spaces. St. Anthony Green Streets is one of our projects that combines our FEMA public assistance, also known as the JIR program money, with HUD money, so that we can really maximize the benefits of both programs. The JIR money didn't include that much money to upgrade drainage. Public assistance tends to be a replace in kind program. And so by combining these two programs, we're able to make sure that we're not tearing up the street twice, that we're using our drainage money for drainage and we're using our streets money for streets. As you can see from the rendering, we're going to be having green infrastructure and water features in the parks, enhancing existing parks with play spaces, and we'll be having public art in these parks as well. This project, the first phase, is already finally designed. It's ready to go to bid pending environmental clearance. And then we have 2 streets packages. So when we are doing these NDR projects, we embrace something that you've probably heard referred to as debundling, where we're taking a $35 million project and we're breaking it down so we get closer to a $5 to $10 million threshold, so we can bring it closer to the bonding threshold or to the bonding threshold available with local programs of our small and local businesses. So what does debundling really look like? You can see here, we've taken this project and we've just broken it up geographically. Other projects, we broke them up by scope. So you'll hear me talk about building versus parks. But this is one that shows you a little bit, how are we breaking these down? And how are we making sure that we're making opportunities directly available for our small and local businesses? St. Bernard campus is another project where we have a package that's completely designed and pending environmental clearance. This one is broken up by scope. So we have recreational amenities of a football field, a ball field, a running track, and we have a multi-use building with a concession area in it. So we've broken up the recreational amenities fields, the concession building, and then we've broken up the improvements that are going to be taking place upon Milton Street. And we're also adding a fishing pier and kayak launch there on Bayou St. John. Now, part of the reason why we wanted to add the kayak launch there on Bayou St. John is to make it accessible for people that are in wheelchairs or have difficulty walking over uneven ground, so that they're able to experience and enjoy interacting with Bayou St. John. It was important to us to enhance the street with green infrastructure, all the way from St. Bernard to the Juvenile Justice Center, so that people that are getting off the bus to use that facility, that they're not coming along a street that is completely exposed, extremely hot. This neighborhood is actually one of our hot spots for urban heat in the city. So a lot of the improvements, they're not just storing stormwater, but we have information from Trust for Public Land that these green spaces can reduce the temperature of the neighborhood by up to 6 degrees. And that temperature difference from a park can be seen over a distance of half a mile. So this is really first and foremost seen as a stormwater project. It's also a very important community project and a very important urban heat project. Dillard Wetlands is taking a city property that is currently not in use and is forested, and we're turning it into an urban forest park. Urban forest being something that is extremely rare, and that we're not really making a lot of new urban forest. So on this project, we're going to be going in and removing invasive species. We're going to be adding native species. Currently, right now, our data from Tulane and the Mosquito Termite Control Board is that this parcel is a pretty significant reservoir of mosquito activity. So by going in and grading it and making sure that we have circulating water bodies, or that we have water bodies that drain completely after 48 hours, we're turning something that is not in community use into community use. But we're also taking something that's been a negative for public health, a mosquito reservoir, and we're going to resolve that problem. And then the last little piece that we're adding here is we are adding an outdoor classroom that we coordinated stakeholder groups with local teachers on what they would like to see out of the site and how they would use it. The feedback from local educators was very positive. And so we're really excited to have a venue to bring nature benefits to our children. Community adaptation program was a new program for HUD. This is the first time that they've ever done anything with private property. And so this program did not directly make grants to low and moderate income homeowners. It allowed them to choose from a menu of pre-approved stormwater interventions, and then they could choose the contractor from a pre-approved list and a designer from a pre-approved list. But by not directly making the grant to them, this is a program that Nora managed, that it didn't affect the person's ability to qualify for benefits in the future, but it also gave them choice and it gave them a say in the program. So in addition to storing almost 500,000 gallons of stormwater in just this project alone, where they've now completed 187 of these interventions on low to moderate income homeowner property, this is one where each homeowner also got their own manual on how to maintain what had been put on their property. So it also served as a really great way to educate residents on the value of green infrastructure and how individual actions on individual properties affect drainage in the community. On our placemaking activity, we have a grant to Arts Council. I've got 2 pictures here for things that were already installed in the neighborhood. So the photo on the top is Carl Joe Williams and the young artist movement of their harmony piece, which talks about the benefits of, talks about the patterns between what we see in nature and what we see with climate change. And then the second photo on the bottom, that's from Unity, which is at the London Avenue Canal Breach site. And so if it's a little bit hard to see in the photo, but if you go experience that piece of art in person, so actual words, actual stories from people that experience this are part of this piece of art. And so when people go out to the breach site, they can also see this piece of art in addition to the history that's out there on what happened at the breach site. And last but not least, we can't leave without talking to you about the future. So Argo Mesa bonds, we're currently doing the, we're currently looking at the scoping list, getting ready to start design and checking on our construction and design cost estimates, moving forward with that list. Now, I mentioned earlier that we had some projects where we couldn't make BCA. So we're specifically looking and making sure that we hit Algiers, Treme, and New Orleans East, and those areas that have not yet seen a project. We also have neighborhood drainage studies that are underway for Mid-City, Lakeview, and West End neighborhoods that will inform future projects. But we intend that these projects will include some of the features that you're already seeing. So permeable parking lot upgrades, neighborhood drainage upgrades and bioswales, and then looking at our existing green spaces that are maybe not currently in optimal community use. And how can we both make those a drainage asset, an urban heat asset, and a community asset?
Great. Councilmember Green.
Thank you for your presentation. Clearly, this was the right time for voters to elect to represent Gentilly, a guy named Green. Great
Yeah.
projects. I wanna
Councilman
thank the
Green,
voters.
Councilman Green, you came in a little late. Joe actually introduced me as Mary Green, which would be a title I would be
Right.
fine with.
Green all over the place.
Yes.
No, I just want to say, to the public that's watching as these developments happen, and obviously, I'm pleased that they're going on in, District D in Gentilly, but it's more so that the city, through that grant and through your work and through the work of Public Works, and all those who are associated with it, are doing something that could be a model in terms of development for throughout the nation as to how you control flooding, because it's obviously a concern not only here, but in other places. But for the residents who have long waited for these projects to start, I'll just say that when you see them and you see the development, it's going to have been worth the wait. The interpretive center and other improvements that we're making to this plan are going to make it it's going to make it something that the entire community will be proud of. And I want to make it clear that even though it's a Gentilly sort of development, it's for the city. It's for the metropolitan area. Come and see how we're doing things when this project is done. Come and see while it's under construction, and come and walk in our communities and take a look at what is being done that can be done throughout the nation to help make our communities less prone to flooding. I want to thank organizations such as those who are here, but I look at the St. Bernard project, and I want to thank Sol, for example, for picking the St. Bernard project as one to do, but it is going to lower the mean temperature in a community that should not have ever had a situation where we don't have trees, and also the infrastructure to help keep the citizens comfortable in that community. I do want to say one thing, Joe, and I'm going to lean on you a little bit. These projects are great, such as the bioswales. Make sure that we have the money to maintain them. That's so important. I mean, the bioswales are great in the Pontchartrain Park and Pontilly communities, but their effectiveness is by having the amount of storage available for the water. And if we let them get overgrown, then it's going to kind of defeat the purpose. They look nice, but they don't look nice when they're overgrown. But just in general, just an appeal to you all to continue to keep me and the council looped in as you've done here today. I want to thank Councilman Harris and her staff for putting this on the agenda. It does give me a chance to say to the citizens who've been asking me every day that it's worth it to wait, because it's going to be such a great project. But as someone named Green, who's strongly supportive of green initiatives, I'm pleased to see the city moving in this direction, and I look forward to working with you.
And like I said earlier, it's going to take a close coordination with the other construction projects we got going across the city.
Right.
Before we start work on some of these, but they're in the chute right now to start.
Right. And thank you for your communications, your constant communication. I do want you to address those 4 streets that I gave you the other day, but the main thing is let's focus on green infrastructure, stormwater management, reducing flooding in our city, and serving as a model for the rest of the nation. Thank you.
Councilman Green, if I could speak to your question about maintenance of bioswales.
Yes.
As you know, Deputy CAO Threat has beefed up the Office of Resilience and Sustainability and significantly staffed it. They're working right now, I believe they put out the first part of a green infrastructure maintenance contract.
Good.
And so we are looking at that long term, and that's getting ready to hit the streets pretty soon.
Great. Okay. And I look forward to working with you to have one great project at the Gentilly Terrace site. All right. We'll make that happen.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. And Mary, can you just go back to the Saratoga Square lot? It looks like from your slide that it's 100% designed, and that you're looking on a construction bid in the 3rd quarter of 2023 to start construction. Is that correct?
That's correct. Let me go back to that. Yes. And primarily that's because of waiting for the environmental clearance. So we have to submit the conveyance to DEQ, and then we give it to FEMA. FEMA does the final environmental clearance, and then I believe for a project of this size, it has to go all the way up to DC for approval.
Yeah, it goes up to the million dollar queue at Washington DC. This one was held up a little bit because we had received a letter from Tulane Law that wanted us to go back and look at the initial findings on the site to make sure it was clean. So we had to go back and do another $2 million worth of remediation to make sure that was clean. That's what held up the LDEQ paperwork. So we just finalized that.
So now it's remediated and we're gonna get a water park sort of bioswale,
Right.
water
Groundwater
retention
is mostly underground storage.
situation. Okay.
Yeah, so this is what's going to happen in Saratoga. So it's above ground storage for Saratoga. It's below ground for Taylor. So this one is mainly above ground, but also adding lots of trees.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot that has just been sitting there for a long time, not with any use. So I think the neighbors will be excited about it. Can you talk about AL Davis Park and the plans for that? I know it wasn't on this list that I saw, or was it?
Yeah, let me go back to that. So as far as I know, AL Davis is going to be very similar to Taylor,
Okay.
where we're not affecting anything above ground and the future use will be preserved. But I'll be happy to send more detailed rendering to your office.
Yeah, especially given the fact that the Mardi Gras Indian Council is here and they're taking care of AL Davis Park. If we can get an update, that'd be great. Any other questions from the dais? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next agenda item.
Okay, I have the correct agenda now.
Wait 1 second. It appears there's a late breaking public comment. And just a reminder, everyone, public comment is 2 minutes.
Okay, so my name is Gwen Smith. My family originally owned the property. The family property is in District B. My sister is here also with me, Crystal. And the reason why we're here today, we are trying to ascertain why we didn't have any we had improper notification to the neighbors. I do live in District A, and I'm trying to see, we did not have good input in regards to this project. And a lot of the neighbors who I grew up with in the neighborhood did not receive any notification as to input. And it's supposed to be, to my understanding, a 4-block radius of people contacting in the radius thereof, and we were not contacted. I wasn't contacted. My sister wasn't contacted. Her name is still on the rolls for the property tax, and we would like to address that. We also wanted to talk about, I'm so glad that Eugene Green brought up the issue regarding the maintenance, and I understand if maintenance is not dealt with, it will be overgrown, it will be hazardous. So therefore, I'm here to let the city council know and the people who are here on the committee know that proper notification was not due process in regards to the residency of our area, and we want input. We had no input, and understand that this project is moving forward. So if we can keep all that in mind, I'd like to talk to someone after about that, because it is within the property value and it addresses property values. So that is my concern.
Okay.
What location is that, ma'am?
3009 South Saratoga Street. It's a double. Yeah, we're half a block. My mother purchased the property. It's a half a block from the 7th Street incinerator. So we didn't get any input, and we're trying to get that. That's why I came today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have someone talk to you afterwards. Thank you so much. Next agenda item.
Okay, now we have the Culture of Cleanliness campaign. The presentation of their 2022 accomplishments and goals for 2023. You want me to click it for you? You can control it from here or, okay. Yeah. Where are we? Need a PowerPoint? Yes. So we can either use these arrows.
Right.
or you-
Arrows, ready to go?
Can y'all introduce yourselves? Although we all know who you are.
My name is Gregory Swafford. I represent Culture Players co-founder.
I am Ben Bagwell. I am part of the Culture of Cleanliness, and I've born and raised, lived in New Orleans my entire life.
And I'm Sage Michael. Well, council, thank you for inviting us today. And I want to thank the community in attendance, those viewing online. And here we're here today to present you the culture of cleanliness and our efforts to establish a culture that we can be proud of. Today, we'll be talking about our mission, the philosophy of our campaign, and our 2022 accomplishments, as well as the approach to sustainability and call to action. We are committed to having and improving the quality of life in New Orleans for our communities that are going through so much. We work to provide clean, safe public spaces, shifting counterproductive mindsets of some people, often to no fault of their own, because they are contained within systems that work against them daily, and they can't grow properly. Just like this plant in a potted container, running out of room to grow its roots, it becomes root-bound and stagnant. We shift that mindset by letting our light shine and lift that plant up and lift that person up and plant them in good earth. And then together we grow a new culture, a culture of cleanness. Cleanliness is next to godliness, someone told me. So if Jesus washed his disciples' feet, we could clean up our streets. We have an umbrella campaign. And what you see here is we have a coordinated umbrella campaign to bridge silos and effectively pool resources. We have strategic messaging with intentional communications, controlling the narrative. Like we have the culture of cleanness, we have food culture, music culture, but we also have a culture of throwing trash out the window. Hence the derivative of our campaign name. We also intend on building coalitions to connect those dots. And we document and measure results using the IC Change data tracker to capture the stories of the people and the data, but at the end we input viable solutions. And last, sustainability. It's community-based and we are action-driven.
So in the past 3 years, our combined efforts have produced tangible results. On the screen, you can see the data that we have generated individually and collectively. More importantly, but also adopting the public space around it. The message is apolitical. Everyone can be a part of the culture shift. It defines racial barriers. It defines age barriers. Infants as young as 6 months old to elders 70 years of age have found value in our message. It defines social and income barriers. We've had professionals earning upwards of $1 million a year pick up a shovel and contribute. In a short time, our campaign has penetrated and impacted every walk of life in New Orleans for the greater good. Furthermore, our message has shed light on crime, public health, and infrastructure.
We face issues like some contractors and some tire shops whose businesses we support, yet dump their waste in our communities. People of all classes throwing trash out their window. We have an overwhelmed code enforcement division. Products of plastic industry going down our storm drains, into our lake, into our marshes, into the places that create our crawfish. In blight. Blight is a crime which leads to more escalated crimes. In the current approach, it's just more isolated strategies, people working in silos. It's not a long-term strategy. I remember Mayor Dutch Morial gave us a great example of a program such as this. We're not reinventing the wheel, we're just trying to carry it on.
Okay, so these are some of our past accomplishments, recent accomplishments. In early September, along Bundy Road between Lake Forest Boulevard and Dwyer, we uncovered a parcel of land that had been neglected for over 17 years. This was during Keep Louisiana Beautiful Week. We organized our effort to address dead drainage systems, public safety, dumping, and beautification. The end result, in a matter of a few hours, we restored the walkways to functionality at a fraction of the cost it would have cost anyone to do it. Simultaneously, we identified other opportunities and areas of improvement for the Wimbledon community. And not 30 days later, we were tipped on a former houseless encampment under the Claiborne overpass. This site was polluted with syringes, debris, metal scraps, and surprisingly, a boat. With the help of the Department of Sanitation, New Orleans EMS, Councilwoman Leslie Harris Department office, and our culture of cleanliness support, we neutralized the problem in under 4 hours. Again, we saved money, we produced a result, and we established a working agreement with the neighborhood business, Uptown Recycling, for them to work with us in keeping that area monitored. What we later recognized was how the population's public health intersected with cleanliness. Last, on Martin Luther King Day of this year, the Culture of Cleanliness mobilized to restore 2 city blocks of illegal dumping. This effort posed a greater deal of complexity. We worked with Valero Gas Station, Uptown Recycling, and 3120 Josephine Street, a mechanic shop. Councilwoman Leslie Harris' office and the Department of Sanitation, we extracted over 600 needles, 200 tires, and 140 bags of waste. Okay, so as Sage Michael mentioned, our current approach to tackling community issues are siloed. The culture of cleanliness is an ideology first, and organization second. So our partners we work with also demonstrate collaborative qualities that allow us to penetrate community and have greater impact in a short amount of time. People work with us because we represent New Orleans well. We keep our word on our commitments we make, we perform quality work, and we raise awareness, and most importantly, we move our community forward in a time of havoc and chaos. So our strike team is a group of 3 to 5 individuals who are deployed to recently neutralize dumping sites to maintain progress at those sites and report on opportunities to further curb the behavior in that area. So for example, someone may recommend fencing, signage, or form a working agreement with the business to leverage their equipment or other resources. The strike team is a living wage paid role to eliminate illegal activity and eventually beautify areas of our city that have gone underinvested. So over the past 90 days, we performed a case study under the Claiborne overpass adjacent to the Home Depot and Uptown Recycling, where we monitored, excuse me. We formed a strike team to monitor and touch up the site over a 90-day period, and virtually the dumping has been eliminated. This is a testament to working with the business, them understanding the value and the message that we're advocating for, them taking their responsibility, and basically just neutralizing dumping, and people that come and view the site just decide to go dump somewhere else. They're not supposed to go dump somewhere else, but they take the dumping elsewhere. So that's what we want until it's eventually gone.
Hello again, council members, and I want to thank you for having us here. I want to thank Councilmember Harris for joining us at our last cleanup. When I personally told you, thanks for walking and not just talking, and you explained how important that was, and I really appreciate it. I see you, Eugene, planting all those trees all the time too, so no, I know you got soul. And then I want to thank Greg and Sage for really leading this effort. They say it's really we, not me or I. And really that's what it's about, this culture of cleanliness. Sustainability is kind of this buzzword that seems to be very valuable nowadays around the country, around the world, and especially here. We just heard it in the last presentation. We see it with the dollars committed to these projects with these buzzwords, sustainability and green. So what does sustainability mean to the culture of cleanliness and to the city of New Orleans? I'm standing here, and I have been here before on the other side of that glass, advocating for sustainability and real solutions to our resource management problems we're facing. So I'm going to start with a quote. When you tell me, I forget. When you teach me, I may remember. But when you involve me, I learn. We're asking to be involved in this process with you all, so we can learn, and then we can help others learn as well. So one of my favorite personal quotes is, by connecting to the earth, we connect to each other. Sustainability is about respecting the earth and connecting to the earth. And when we connect and respect the earth, we in turn connect and respect each other. And it starts with connecting to the earth and then connecting to each other. So big picture, there is no sustainability without collaboration and without cooperation. Sustainability on a larger scope really means clean air, clean water, and clean lands. It means a city of New Orleans that other people besides us can live in, that the next generation can enjoy, that our tourists who travel from around the world can see and want to appreciate more and want to respect it when they get here, as opposed to contribute to putting trash on the ground, because we're changing and shifting that culture. So why is it important? We have a problem. You all see it, you all talk about it. The last meeting, when you talked about trash and sanitation, there's a lack of education. We want to be able to help with that public campaign of that proactive approach in your districts, hands-on meeting with different people in the community. Greg and I hosted an event here in Lake Terrace where we actually collected, we were the Elysian Fields drop-off plus compost, some of the things you really want to be a part of for sustainability. We were able to interact with over 40 residents in the neighborhood, and everyone said, how can we have this every weekend? So we want to turn waste into an opportunity, right? And you all help us have the ability to do that. While working with the culture of cleanliness, you get personal development skills, can be community service work, and these skills are directly transferable to city organizations like sanitation or parks and parkways, as well as providing infrastructure and opportunities for you to take care of your community, and then for you to be able to take care of your family and maybe take care of your city. So I just want to thank you all for listening, and thank you for the possibility to collaborate on true sustainable measures.
Okay, so we want to establish a public-private partnership, cooperative agreement between the city of New Orleans and the culture of cleanliness, with the vision of this relationship transforming from administration to administration itself into the fabric of our city. To get contact with the culture of cleanliness, follow us on Instagram at eBay's Culture, or text clean to 504-264-8325. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Green.
Thank you all for the work that you do. And I do like to emphasize that it is a culture, and we have to change the culture somewhat. I appreciate the work that you've done and your outreach to me, and thank you all very much. It's making a difference a little bit. It is frustrating that, for example, I'm gonna applaud the Department of Sanitation with a couple of cleanups that they've had recently, but then people come back to the site because it's cleaned up and they dump in those particular sites. But I will say this on the record, a lot of those people who are illegally dumping, and this is not something that, you know, I take lightly, come from other cities and decide that New Orleans is the place for them to illegally dump. The most recent crackdown that we had on a particular dumper was in the Gentilly area. We got a video and a call from a citizen, and we went to the site. Someone who had leased a vehicle in Alabama had dumped their trash under 610. And we had the Department of Public Works on the line immediately calling the company because it was a leased vehicle. It was leased from Alabama. And when they got the call, the lease company got the call, they must have called the person who leased it, and they went back and cleaned it up because we were threatening to take that vehicle. My point is that that's the disrespect that's shown to our community by many times people from outside of our community. So this is almost a battle. Well, it is a battle. It's a war to address the culture of cleanliness that we need to have in our city. Now, that is not to give any light to, or not to shed in as bright a light those who are in our city who do the wrong thing. When you stop by the side of the road and you take your container and put it outside instead of waiting until you get to your own home to dump, that's part of a culture that needs to be addressed, and you all are doing it through the culture of cleanliness. I know that we have a Mardi Gras atmosphere, And everyone on at Mardi Gras time understands that you can just take your trash and drop it on the streets. You don't want the beads. If you've drunk something from a cup, you can drop it on the side. But those are one-time occasions, festivals. That should not be the culture that we have in our city, that you can just dump whenever you want. Take the time out to put the trash back in your car and bring it to your house, or find that trash can. There's a trash can that's walking distance in most instances. I say that because the public arena gives me a chance to kind of get on that soapbox again, because I have been working not only to plant trees and do some cleanups, but to stop the continuous abuse of the areas that have already been cleaned.
Yes.
And we've really got to stop that. But I just want to say, I look forward to working with you in multiple ways that we can, because this council is committed, because we continually say it, but we're making a difference with some areas. There are some areas near St. Anthony and North Roman where we can clean up a dump on Thursday, and even with cameras around, by Tuesday, there's more trash there, because some people who are getting paid for the job of taking trash to the right place choose simply to get paid for those jobs, whether it be the landlord cleaning out a property or someone who's done a renovation. And instead of going out to Almanasta Avenue where they're supposed to, and pay that tipping fee, they simply are cowards who dump under the cover of night, and especially in low income to moderate income communities in our city. I do have a question at the end, but I want to tell you this. There are some areas of District D that are so pristine, you could never imagine that anybody would go there and dump sheetrock and dump paint cans and things like that. And I am not knocking those neighborhoods. What I am knocking is those people who choose to take their debris and refuse from places that they've cleaned up and that they've gotten paid for. They purposely look to areas where they feel that there won't be repercussions. But in the future, as we build our city, there are going to be repercussions, including taking those vehicles that you're using and getting those vehicles towed, impounded. But I look forward to working with you, because 2023 is going to be different than it has been in the history of this city, because of you all and because of this council, the money that we put aside. I think the commitment of departments such as the Department of Sanitation, and just also the use of video and people getting more aware that 311 is a place that you can get some relief from. But I just want to say this, the culture of cleanliness needs to be the culture of our city.
That's right.
And in terms of what we will do, tell us how we can work with you to make that get done. But thank you for the work that you've done so far.
Thank you, Councilman Green. I appreciate everything you say. I look forward to meeting with you all to establish those agreements.
All right, let's do public comment, and then I want to thank you as well for everything you do. Nellie Katzen.
Hey, folks.
Hey.
It's great to see you all, and great to see our friends and partners here with Culture of Cleanliness, promoting the great work that they've been doing. I just wanted to add a little anecdote to the value more broadly of something like this. In 2014 and 2015, I worked with a bunch of neighbors on a space that was a vacant railroad at the time. And the first 6 months we started picking up trash. It was the only thing we were doing out there. And we picked up 1 ton of garbage by hand in 6 months. Joe's shaking his head. He remembers these days. The next year we picked up 2 tons of garbage once a month. We could barely keep up with it. Every single month we were out there, we're hauling mattresses, we're hauling tires, we're picking up waste, we're picking up needles, we're picking up all of these things. And that space today, like 10 years later, has attracted hundreds of millions or $20 million in investment, is used by hundreds of thousands of residents, and maintains its identity as a community space. And so we have seen time and time again the impact that these sort of measures have. To Councilman Green's comment on sort of what makes it that people stop doing this, right? And it is exactly what Sage and his team have been doing. Consistent and persistent cleaning up till you build civic pride. And I think that is really the underlining thing that makes this work so important, as well as coming together as neighbors. There's real opportunity here to rebuild the sort of trust that we need for our quality of life in our communities. Certainly bringing people together to collaborate is one great way to do that. Thanks for the work you all are doing. And thank you all for the opportunity for these folks to share the great impact they're doing.
Thank you. Chris Lang.
Um, Greetings, everybody. You've seen me here before speak, and I just want to say, like, just raise so much props to you guys for leading this initiative, a culture of cleanliness. I wanted to just like echo the need for engaging community and being able to create that cultural change. But as Nelly had mentioned, you know, sometimes you clean things up and then right afterwards, stuff's gonna get dirty. And I want to address sort of the more structural level of waste that's really prevalent across the world, but I think it's also a heightened experience here in New Orleans because of its proximity to the petrochemical industry, which then also has an economic incentive to overflood the communities with single-use disposals, which are plastic. And so I think the city itself has a requirement to basically set and establish incentives and policies that have downstream impacts to shift culture in the direction of sustainability, which is the direction of cleanliness. And so there's a lot of options that other cities have started to take and consider in terms of single-use disposal bans, extended producer responsibility bills, bottle bills that basically incentivize consumers to be able to take items or bring them back to sort of a place where they can be returned and there's a financial incentive to return that money. But also, because there's a fledgling or sort of inadequate recycling system here, I think it's actually an opportunity to jump ahead of recycling, not in terms of glass and aluminum and cardboard, which are really, those are reusable items and they make sense to recycle, but plastic as a recycling enterprise is a failure across the nation. Only 5 to 7% of plastic actually even gets recycled. Most of it ends up in the landfill or the streets or the environment. And here it ends up in the streets. And that's because of the structure that's in place from what we call quick service restaurants that exists. And it's very common here. There's 1,400 restaurants in this city. A lot of them are quick service restaurants that rely on single-use disposal models. So you can change that through an incentive and a structural change in reuse. So use durable plastics, and those can be recirculated through a logistics team that can wash, sanitize, redistribute to certain restaurants. There can also be a grant set up to incentivize these restaurants, which for no fault of their own are relying on single-use models, but are also creating a lot of these issues downstream that culture of cleanliness is trying to remediate. So just wanted to, add that into here. There's a way to jump ahead of recycling, go into zero waste. Let's bypass it at the source. That would be one of the cleanest solutions, is just not have this product. Because even when you recycle the plastic, it ends up either going down into microplastics or creating toxins in communities where it's being produced. And across the life cycle, the supply chain, it's really just a lose-lose for many people. So I just wanted to put that in there. I just want to echo, y'all are amazing and keep doing the work. And I hope to be here for the next, time and coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Frida Brown.
Good afternoon. Question for you guys. Freddie, I live in your district. You know me. Is there an ordinance or law on the city books regarding bars and their plastic cups? I live down the street from the country club. And I'm tired of picking up and cleaning up plastic cups. Summer is coming, so it's going to be a constant thing. And the recycle can sits on the sidewalk. There's no place else for it to go, so it sits there on the sidewalk. Instead of putting it in the recycle can, they set it on top of the recycle can. So I'm wondering, is there any way in which I could get Marky's Bar and the country club to become aware that the city is pushing for cleanliness? Bywater is inhabited by, trying to find a nice way to put this, snowflakes. So when they sweep, when they have somebody come and blow in front their doors, the leaves go down the drain. And I'm becoming the ogre of the neighborhood, telling people that sweeping these leaves down the drain is clogging up the drainage system. So when it rains and the streets flood, this is why. So I'm behind these guys 100%. I just got introduced to them. I'm working with them to make sure that we clean up the city. We need a recycle program for Gentilly and New Orleans East. These people do not have recycle cans. A lot of them don't even know that the city has a recycle program. So can you guys get on that? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And we'll come talk to you after this. Ms. Kinlaw.
Greetings. I came here today to just give some words of some support and solidarity to say thank you to you, Sage, Gregory, and Ben for your leadership in the community and the culture of cleanliness. On behalf of the New Orleans People's Assembly, we were highly encouraged to come and be present with you all at the last cleanup. And the team that came out said that some things that they appreciate the most is one, the educational component of this work to drive this effort from a community. Also knowing that it sends a message that you don't have to wait on others to give you permission to do the work that needs to be done. And also there was a desire to communicate that we don't have to wait to examine in our communities the root causes of where these problems come from so that we can be able to address them from the core, just like was mentioned earlier. So I want to co-sign that as well. And we also want to just name that while these community driven efforts are happening, we look forward to seeing that the city of New Orleans, from a place of resource, from a place of support, from a place of understanding what community wants and desires to see, just to move an effort forward makes a difference, and that they're not barriers that are ever present to underestimate the power of what can happen when community comes together. So we just want to say thank you, want to give our support and solidarity, and want to encourage people to recognize that community can make change. And it's important that we not criminalize residents for doing their best effort to contend under the conditions that exist, but to address the conditions from their root causes to continue to advance this forward. So we just want to name that and say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan Michael.
Yeah, 1% tall. All right. Hey, everybody. It's been a while. Happy New Year. It's my first time in City Hall, and I get to say hi to you all, which are fine gentlemen. I just came to offer support as well, and just say that really y'all embody something that I think is very important to live by, which is to inspire and to be inspired. Just as we were once inspired, we inspire others. And in this world of quantifiable data, it's hard to understand sometimes the impact we have or what's the whole point in all of this. But when we're talking about a culture shift, it's a marathon. You alluded to war, and it is consistency time and time again. And you gentlemen have inspired me. So I just want to say that. Shout out to Councilman Green too for organizing the sanitation pickup. We were able to clean up in Desire, and it just, I think about this too, is that you all gain this recognition, and this is great, and we give our words, but let's make sure we back those words up. And we also give them that the resources that are needed to fight this war that happens. We even had tourists come out, y'all, on vacation. They're here from Mardi Gras for like 3 weeks and then came out and cleaned up. So these are the little things that we do, and also taking proactive measures. If we know where these things are happening, I understand there's cameras. There's this little stretch on Benefit Street where everyone just kind of throws the trash over. Put some trash cans there, let's at least educate and keep it going. That's all I want to come and say. So I'm really proud of you all, and thank you for everything you do. I met both of you all at City Hall, and I met you at the Culture Cleanliness Campaign in Bunny Friend Park back in June. So anyhow, thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Jordan.
I personally want to say thank you for the cleanups, for your continued educational efforts, and really pushing forward the culture of cleanliness. Whoever wants to come out and help you, I think needs to have that experience. It feels communal, even though we're picking up needles and trash and everything else. It feels like a communal experience where we can get together, do something that benefits the city as a service, but it's also embracing each other, making friends and making the connections that we need to make. So I just want to say thank you. I'm so happy that you're here. And as Councilmember Green said, we'll get together and we'll talk about resources.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go back to minutes.
We had two online comments. I
Oh.
don't know if you wanted me to read them in.
Yes, please.
First one is from Michael Gibbs, who says absolutely the best thing that ever happened to the city of New Orleans. Culture of cleanliness is the most important part of today's infrastructure plan for New Orleans going forward from this moment on. The city is absolutely devastated by poor leadership from terrible management and neglect. Culture of cleanliness is and continues to heal society through voluntary efforts with strong leadership and is turning around the city of New Orleans' blight issues and challenges that the public officials have abandoned. Culture of cleanliness is better than any city organized efforts to improve quality of life, street flooding, crime, and environmental protection, and a sense of pride returning to impoverished communities all over the New Orleans area. I think they have cleaned over thousands of needles and illegal dumping sites without any funding whatsoever. 311 and Roadwork NOLA and the Department of Public Works have let me down countless times and take years and months to complete work. And culture of cleanliness has given the city hope for prosperity and made progress that is so much more dynamic and permanent changes. The city should be embarrassed and embrace culture of cleanliness as they are outperforming city leaders, 311, NOLA and NOLA, Roadwork NOLA, and the entire local government in improving New Orleans neighborhoods while they continue their efforts and mission. The city of New Orleans needs the culture of cleanliness. City should embrace this organization, seeing as they are more successful in their efforts and city leadership is able to achieve by itself. And the other comment is from Brian Brown. Who does not indeed have a comment. Oh, wait. Yeah, no, there's no comment there. Sorry, that's it.
And we have Nick. Nick, you just submitted a card. You want to come on up?
I just want to say real quick, I uplift and celebrate the work that these brothers have started. And your commitment, Councilwoman Leslie Harris, to the idea of keeping Central City clean as our councilwoman. But if I should add the idea of incorporating the youth, I think that a specific campaign and focus and intention on youth engagement around this issue can help seed this idea within our youth so that this type of work could carry on into the future. Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you all, and thank you for coming down here. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you.
You want to go back to minutes, Anita?
Yes, we want to get a motion to approve the minutes from the October 26, 2022 meeting and the December 21st joint meeting with Community of Development.
Okay, I moved, Councilmember Green seconded it, and it's all approved. Okay, cool. Number 5, the Mardi Gras Indian Council.
You can air it through, or you can use this. Yeah, can you do that?
Good evening. Councilman Green, Councilor Harris, Councilman King, and also Councilman Jeruso. We're honored to be here. We're honored that you guys gonna listen at our complaints or grievances we had concerning A.L. Davis Park. My name is Bertrand Butler, Executive Director of a community organization by the name of REAL, Recreating the Environmental Ability to Live. Also, the New Orleans Mardi Gras Indian Council, which stands for New Magic. I'm gonna turn it over to our Assistant Director, Michael Forley. Thank you, members, for inviting us. We're here today to first inform you guys on the things that we're doing. Talk about some of the concerns and also looking forward to the future. Shakespeare Park, which now is named A.L. Davis Park. A.L. Davis Park was named after Reverend A.L. Davis, pastor at that time of New Zion Baptist Church. He was the first Black member of the New Orleans City Council. And he spent a lifetime civil rights and children. So in that spirit, the community, the New Orleans Mardi Gras Indian Council are taking up that spirit and doing some things in the park in order to make this park a better place. As you see here, that's a picture of the park from up above. And we also want to thank the city for the use of the park for Super Sunday. It's an event that we have, community event that's produced by the Real and also by the New Orleans Mardi Gras Indian Council. And we want to thank you for the use of the park. But we also want to say that we're committed to this park, not only just on that one particular day, but throughout the year. So with that being said, what we've started is we started some beautification projects. Where there once was graffiti, we teamed up with Tulane service learning students and we supplied materials and we started to repaint the park. We also have commissioned an artist to put another image of what the Real is a booster for the park, and the park is A.L. Davis Panthers. So we commissioned an artist to recreate another depiction of a panther. We also got a group, and we've been in the process of repainting the center. A few months ago, with Council Member Harris, leaders from NARD and Parks and Parkway, along with some members of the community, we met at the park to kind of go over some of the things that we have been noticing or things of concern. And we want to make it for the record that Parks and Parkway, after this meeting, stepped up in a tremendous way. Here's a picture you'll see where we used to have limbs and so forth that have damaged fence and so forth. They stepped up and came through. We had shrubbery growing all through the fence. So again, we'd like to commend the efforts from Parkways. Now we move on to the concerns. The picture to your left is a picture of concrete bench, tables, what have you. That debris has been there for possibly a year. And we consider that a safety concern. And as of yet, there hasn't been any movement on that. The second picture you see in the middle is a swing set. At this meeting we had, one of the NARD leaders stated to us that A.L. Davis Park is one of the most used park in the city. But the idea of that this park could be that large and have that much activity, we have only 2 swing sets for the entire park. We have little to no other playground equipment for any other than just small children. We need resources and things that for more than just the small kids. And the last picture you see there is a picture of the basketball cover. As you see in that picture, there's water. That's not from a rain that happened that day that I took this picture. That's standing water that's there on a constant basis. So this water causes a safety hazard. Also, those are days that kids can't use the park. Also, our concern is and I didn't have the time to like blow the picture up for you, but we want adequate basketball goals and so forth for this. As you can see in this picture, we have nets up there, but those nets were installed just before a walkthrough. We want more attention to this park other than just before Councilwoman Harris is visiting our park, that we get some things done. The future. There was a group of citizens, and we'll try to supply you guys with a copy of this because it's hard to read. There was a group of citizens from the Magnolia Project Reunion, the New Orleans Mardi Gras Indian Council, neighbors of the park, and other ministers. This was in 2011. The community got together and said, we're going to come up with a plan that we can bring forth to the city and say, this is what we need. This is what we want. But I want to emphasize the word need, first of all. There's a letter, like I said, you can't hardly read it here, but like I said, we will supply with this. The group got together and they came up with a really focused plan on what they needed. And like I said, when you read this, you'll see it's more needs than wants. Basically here, you'll see a list of the things, some things, because it's been 2011, some of those things have been done. But if we look down the list, some of those things need to be, they're in disarray and need to be repaired. So this is kind of a layout of what, in a condensed version of what Shakespeare used to be about. Used to be football field, track, basketball, and I was told even at a time during Mr. L. Davis' time, there even used to be a baseball diamond. But at this point, this is what the community is looking to see. What resources, what's the plan, or what can we do, or what can the city do to help us, even if it's over time, accomplish these goals, because these are really needs. And some of the information, and to give you more background, the community didn't just come up with what they thought was a good idea. They used information from a vision study. Also, we could probably try to get you copies of this. So in short, we come before you to say that we're going to try as a council and the community to keep beautifying the area, but we also want to look for resources and have more of a plan of action toward this park. Thank you.
Let me take a stab at this also. Mayor Morrison in the 50s, late 50s, while we knew this layout, this plan can work, Mayor Morrison, he invested money into that park. It's the oldest Black park we have in the city. Morrison had that park renovated where we did have a track. I think it was a 6-lane track. We had a baseball diamond on the field. The Black baseball team used to come out there and play baseball every Sunday. The ballrooms to play baseball out there. Every school in the city at one time played ball, football, or baseball at A.L. Davis Park. Wow, the history is there. The first Civil Rights March started at A.L. Davis Park. On his Morial, Avery Alexander, Martin Luther King, and all Jerome Smith, all of these giants was present when they marched from Shakespeare Park to City Hall. That's where they dragged Avery Alexander up the stairs here at City Hall. New Zion Baptist Church, that's where the SCLC was organized. Dr. Martin Luther King was the president of ALD, of Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And also ALD was the vice president of Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. It got so much history around this area here, it's unbelievable. And we've been fighting for a long time for some justice. And Thank you, Ms. Harris, for coming to our aid. Even when we had our Dr. Martin Luther King March, we've been doing the march. The first Dr. Martin Luther King March they had in the city started at A.L. Davis Polk. Besides that, the civil rights, the history of SCLC, so much history. We asking you all now to help us, to help the community. This is all we here. We're not asking for no pay raise. We're not asking for pay raise. We're not asking for no income or nothing like that. We here for the community. And we've been the boost of the Pope for 40 years. My God, come on, help us. You know, the New Orleans Mardi Gras Indians Super Sunday, we get some finance, a little finance, and the finance we get, we make contribution to the supervisor over at A.L. Davis Polk, which is Leo. But we don't make a move until the supervisor at that Polk tell us his need. When he tell us his need, then we'll go in the budget if we have any left after paying the audits and the band and et cetera. We will give to the Polk. And most of the time we do have a couple of, we have a few ducats to give to him. So I just thought I'd add the kind of history of life and Mayor Morrison and all. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I know we've met privately about this park and you just heard me ask the city about the watershed project and what the status is. So I'll get that update to you all. But this park is so important and I think you're absolutely right. We need to be supporting it, making sure that the field is not what it looks like right now, which is basically mud, and that the facilities are usable and open by the children, adults, families who use the park on a daily basis. So I will do what I can from this perspective, but I will get you more information and work with the city to make sure that we are moving forward to get some of these things done. I saw that concrete sitting there. It's a shame that it's just broken. And there's some other concrete pieces that probably need to be replaced and looked at. So I'll do what I can from up here and in the community, but we'll get it together at some point. I know we have public comment and Councilmember Drew. So
I just don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but is this part of the capital projects program? Excuse me? I mean, it's not. I mean, seems like we need to include this in the capital projects. I mean, it's just, I'm tired of saying this is we have $300 million bond issuance that we're getting ready to do, parks or infrastructure. And A.L. Davis Park is an important park. I know YLC used to do a lot there, recreate. I'm very familiar with the park and I don't understand when allocating our money, why we're not looking at our parks as being part of capital improvement process and why a park of this significance.
you and I can talk more about it and how we get this park funded. And there's also ARPA dollars that we might be able to use as well. Any other comments, guys? All right, Charles Marsala. And just a reminder, everyone, please try to stay within the 2-minute comment period.
Well, welcome, council. I want to thank everyone for what they're doing on the park. That's it takes a lot of community and it's great to see community effort stepping up and taking care of things that need to be done. I'll note here that A.L. Davis Park, as it was said, was named after Mayor Shakespeare. And Mayor Shakespeare is the gentleman, not to change gears a little bit here, but it's hard to get on the agenda, is that he was responsible for asking the council in 1890 for $10,000 for his committee of 50, which they used to buy Winchester rifles and then massacred Italians. So as we have Italian next month is the month that happened. It's also St. Joseph's event. It'd be great to get on your agenda and great to see the quality of life here, what the Italian community is doing. And again, at the same time, I want to thank, because I've watched what's going on. I know there was a trip to Jazz in Italy for the Mardi Gras Indians. I want to thank all that's going on. We work together, and I hope you put us on your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Burnside.
Michael Eric Burnside, 2215 Felicity. I walk along Ferret maybe once a week. I've done that for about 7 years. The reason it's mud is people use it. It's the most used park in the city, and I don't know anybody who's going there asking the people who use it whether they want it changed. A lot of people use it for soccer. There's a lot of soccer played at that park, and there's not a lot of football. Things change in 12 years. I, for one, want an enclosed swimming pool because that's my personality. I want swimming available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I'm in favor of an enclosed swimming pool. I'm not in favor of a football. Football season comes and goes, and the football field is there for half of the season with no people on it. People try to use a football field for non-football activities, and then you have to go and remake the football field. We did that in the high school. I was a high school teacher for years, and I was to go redo the football field all the time. If you want a track, that's a little bit different story. If you want a baseball diamond, that's a little bit different story. But football requires teams, teams require organization. And if you don't have a bunch of adults running things, they're just not used. So I'm not in favor of football field. I'm not really in favor of Panthers either, because the park's claim to fame is its civil rights roots. The memorials should be of A.L. Davis. They should be of Martin Luther King. They should be of the people who did the walk. They didn't take a panther with them. They were peaceful people. And yeah, I guess that's about it. I learned something today. I didn't know that A.L. Davis was named by his parents, Abraham Lincoln Davis. So you learn something every day.
Thank you. Nick? Nick, you still here?
Greetings, council members again. As a volunteer coach at A.L. Davis, I'm 100% favor of a football field being restored. It causes a safety hazard for the athletes, whether football or soccer. The fact that it's unleveled can easily, give us some type of foot injury while running. Secondly, just addressing the real organization as a whole. I'm requesting that we meet at the table in terms of getting adequate support for the football team. There's a lack of communication on a lot of fronts, and this has been, problematic for, the few years. And as a volunteer coach, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of leverage in the conversation, but as a community member and preservationist first of the Central City community, it raises issues outside of just me being a coach and facilitating in that role. It's bigger questions that need to be answered, and I encourage the real team to let's make that happen in a real way. But as far as the plan, I'm in 100% favor of that. I think that'll bring a great addition to Central City on top of the redevelopment of Dewdrop Inn coming this summer. I think that, just an overall upgrade to the park is needed, necessary, and it will help enhance what we're building around in other areas. Thanks.
Thank you. More late breaking cards. Ms. Kinlaw.
I just want to say a couple of things, co-sign some things that were already said. I want to say thank you to the group, the Mardi Gras Indian Council, for coming forward to speak on these issues in terms of improvements that need to be made in the park. Councilman Jeruso, you already spoke to what I was going to share, which is that a number of these items that have been named could easily be tapped into those resources. And it's not the first time that this has been said in these chambers. I just want to name that. I also want to just add that as it relates to Nick being a person who's in the community on a regular basis, working with children, as it relates to a football field, football fields in different parks take on different characteristics. Football fields don't have to be limited to just being a football field. It can be a football field that also has a track and has multi-purpose use. So I think that when we think one-dimensionally about space, that prohibits the full use from what's needed for quality of life. The one thing that we can say as people who are in community is we see children in that park utilizing it no matter what condition it's in. And so it's in our best interest to ensure that it is being well kept. I also want to go on record as saying that I've been part of a group who's literally taken brooms to push that water out so that people and children could actually play basketball. That is an unnecessary task. But coming behind a culture of cleanliness, that's a part of our community engagement. We see children who want to use that space. And so rather than say you can't use it because the water's there, we push the water out to make space and room for the children to play. And I just think that I would hope that the community would take full advantage of just naming and co-signing once again that what has been shared, Councilman Jeruso, in terms of those funds, there's no reason why this can't be addressed sooner than later, because a lot of us do value that park in a significant way for not only the children, but the families in the neighborhood. So just naming that.
Thank you. Are there any online comments? All right. Thank you so much for coming down here.
Thank
Look
you all
forward
very
to
much.
working with you.
Thank you all.
All right.
All right.
Bye. Number 6.
This is sustaining our urban landscape. So presentation on the New Orleans Reforestation Master Plan.
Hello, I'm Susanna Burley. I'm the founder and executive director of Soul. Thank you, Councilman Harris and the Quality of Life Committee for having me here today. I'm here because last Friday we launched the New Orleans Reforestation Plan that embodied 2.5 years of work by a coalition of nonprofits, government agencies, professionals, and Councilman Green, who we are proud to say is our board member, he passed a resolution in support of it last week. So I just want to give you a quick review of how this came to be. You all know the master plan for the 21st century. So we submitted comments to that, and we started talking with Paul Kramer of City Planning. And we realized that we had a lot of similar questions. What percentage of our city is covered by trees? What are the trends? Where are the trees located? How do we compare to other cities? So we hired a company named Quantum Spatial to get baseline data. They created a report for us. And we were very surprised that our tree canopy is only 18.5% coverage of our city, whereas other cities of similar density usually have 30 to 40% tree canopy coverage. And that has great meaning because we know we have stormwater issues and flooding issues in the city. We're the hottest heat island in the nation now. And trees like the bald cypress, our state tree, can absorb 880 gallons of water per day. So this was a wake-up call. And we decided, okay, we don't only need data, but we need a plan around this. And how do we address this? So JP Morgan Chase kindly funded the plan. And we began an extensive process of outreach, data collection, and research. We hired Tracy Birch, the managing director of the LSU Coastal Design Studio, and she led the outreach process. In June 2021, we met with professionals and folks who work in city departments who interface with trees. And then that fall, we had 6 outreach meetings in communities all over the city. All of the meetings, interestingly, expressed the same challenges, whether they were citizens or professionals. The biggest one being that the tree canopy is inequitably distributed. So here and across the world, the tree canopy is located where you have concentrated wealth. And where you have concentrated poverty, you don't have trees. So that became the main thread going through this document. Other issues that came up, conflicting or missing urban forestry policies, limited space. So where do we plant the trees? Lack of maintenance, which leads to lack of funding for the department who does the maintenance, parks and parkways, lack of resources, public's understanding of trees, interagency coordination. So for example, if you're doing road work, what happens to the trees on the road? Okay. So out of these meetings, some folks expressed interest in having more in-depth meetings. And so we formed some technical advisory meetings, which told us that we needed even more data. So we hired CASA Systems, which confirmed the data that we originally had, but they also gave us this information that you see up here, which is startling. The majority of our city has less than 10% tree canopy, with a great deal of people having less than 5%. It's outrageous. The Garden District, which we know is a very canopied area, only has 13.7% tree canopy. That tells you a lot. City Park only has 30.7% canopy. So at this point, we had a ton of information, data, feedback from the public and from professionals and research. So we hired local landscape architecture firm, Spackman Moss & Michaels, to turn all of this information into a plan that makes sense. And out of it came three main goals. First, no net loss. So we're losing trees as fast as we can plant them. This doesn't make any sense. We're losing them to development. There are no laws for trees on private property. You can take down a 300-year-old live oak if you want. And then of course, storms. Second, create a unified tree policy. So if you look at the cities across our country with thriving urban canopies like Atlanta, Austin, Nashville, they all have tree policies. So the Office of Resilience and Sustainability is the department who is interested in working on this, and also the nonprofit, the Water Collaborative. But ORS does need funding to pay for another person in their office to deal with this, because this is a big undertaking, and the goal is not too far off in the future. Let's see. Oh, and this is just, I meant to show this slide a moment ago, but this shows other cities with similar density in their tree canopies. And then remember that ours is 18.5. The third goal is to plant an equitable urban forest. This is the big piece. We need to plant a lot of trees, 100,000 trees by 2040. We need to plant a significant density in all neighborhoods, regardless of income or influence. And we need to do this collaboratively. All the nonprofits working on tree plantings with the city of New Orleans at the center of it, with us supporting them, meaning being the nonprofits, corporate sponsors, and volunteers. So I wish we could get up to the place where we need to be to scale up appropriately tomorrow, but we can't. We've got a lot of barriers for the nonprofits, or at least for Soul. I can say that we only plant native trees, and we have a big supply chain issue. So we're working with the tree farmers to have more available native trees and a better diversity of trees in stock. Of course, we're going to need more people to get the trees in the ground. So that means more volunteers. I know you all can help with that. Councilman Green does a tremendous job of spreading the word to his constituents. But also any ideas for, building capacity with volunteers would be appreciated. And this also probably means that we need to professionalize the planting. So bringing people on our staff who all they do is plant trees. And then of course, funding. We need more funding to plant trees. At the city level, they have to scale up as well. Like the 1,500 trees that we plant currently give a lot of extra work to Parks and Parkways. So they absolutely need more people on staff to process tree permits, on their forestry staff to do the actual tree trimming and assess the tree's health. So the national average per capita spending for public trees is $24.58 per tree. In New Orleans, the cost per tree is $14.42. That's a $10 difference. That's huge. Parks and Parkways by 2022 budget allocation for their forestry workers is 1.5 million, while the national average is $2.5 to $3.5 million. So since you all approved the budget, we really need your support on this. I know at first glance, we need more money to fight crime. We need more money for education. And I absolutely get that and agree with that. But also sea level rise is going to be 1.5 feet higher in 30 years than it is now. We live in a bowl. We live on the coast. Our landscape can look very different in 30 years than it does now. So we have to think about trees as green infrastructure, not just as pretty things.
Susanna, can I interrupt? What has the administration supported that kind of increase to the budget? Because I mean, I'm just going to say what I say all the time. Like usually mayor plus council equals success. And that's not to say the council won't from time to time decide that there are certain priorities, but is the administration taking an official position on?
We're actually meeting with the mayor tomorrow.
Because I don't mean, again, I'm not trying to point a finger at anybody, but things are usually easier when everybody's on the same.
Sure. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So this is what the timeline looks like. So how do we get to 100,000 trees by 2040? Well, between now and 2028, or now in 2030, we need to begin pilot projects. This plan is really unique and very special because it outlines a tree planting project, one in each council district. That's never happened before in any other master plan for reforestation before. So while we are executing the pilot plans, we will be working on the scaling up piece that I just mentioned. And so that the pilots will equal approximately 25,000 trees, and then we'll have 75,000 or so to go. So we need to plant 7,000 trees per year between 2030 to 2040. But that gives us a little breathing room to get operations up both at the nonprofit level and at the city level. So the pilot neighborhood plans, they're all in the document. These are the neighborhoods. It's Holly Grove, the St. Bernard neighborhood, the Whitney corridor in Algiers, Central City, and Little Woods. And so the goal is to get each of these neighborhoods up to 10%. And this will equal about 25,000 trees. And the cost is $12.5 million. Very cheap compared to putting pipes in each of these neighborhoods, right? Ripping up the roads and putting pipes and drainage, et cetera. So I just want to go back to the equity piece. The trees are incredibly and equitably distributed here. So this is the garden district. I mean, it still doesn't look great. We still need a lot more trees in every single neighborhood, but the goal is to get everybody up to a baseline of 10%. So this is the garden district. This is one of the most forested neighborhoods in the city. These are the bird streets out in Lake Vista. And this is Desire. Look at that, no trees. It's just shocking. So this I should have put this slide earlier, but this is just an example of the kind of information that we have for each of the pilot neighborhoods. We have a range of how many trees we can fit there, minimum to maximum, how many trees that is total, and then the cost. And so each of you have this for your district. And I hope you will all support us. I'm sure you will. And in delivering on these pilot projects, I'm excited that the Office of Resilience is trying to help find funding right now from the National Forestry Service. But yeah, we're so excited that this is finally done. It was years of hard work, and we look forward to getting started on it and doing the work.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Green.
Ms. Burley, thank you for the work that you've done to not only help to reforest certain communities as you've done through SOUL, but also to develop the reforestation plan, something that was certainly long overdue. And also that's going to have tremendous value for the city. 1 minute to tell my story. I grew up in the Pontchartrain Park subdivision, and the Pontchartrain Park subdivision was the first community that was made available to an African-American middle class homeowners in the city, and amongst the first in the South. My father served in the military and returned to the city that he enjoyed, where his mother was still living and his wife's mother, my grandmother, was still living. But because of a terrible system, Jim Crow, segregation, he couldn't move into a community that was within a mile of where we lived in Pontchartrain Park because of racial segregation. But those communities, they have beautiful names. And look, for everyone who lives in those communities, this is a knock on the past, not on what you're doing now, the past. But those communities had beautiful names, beautiful bird sanctuaries, but they had covenants that prevented African Americans from moving into those communities. So when they decided to build the Pontchartrain Park community, the city was involved. It was a noble effort, but they cleared out a cypress forest completely to do so and didn't replant. So here we are 60 plus years later, and we have a community that was devoid of trees in many respects until the work of sustaining our urban landscape. And for our urban landscape, and for members of the council, I appreciate the fact that SOUL asked me to join the board, and I said I would join the board if you took a model, a community, and let it serve as a model, and the Pontchartrain Park community was chosen. But you've done planting in other areas too. I just want to emphasize that this is a 100-year plan that we are beginning today. We need to plant not only through 2040, but we need to plant through 2090, and we need to have 1 million trees in place. If we're going to rebuild our city's landscape to the point where we're not so prone to flooding, where we have communities where we can lower the mean temperature. When I was young growing up in Pontchartrain Park, there weren't even thoughts of going to a shade tree, just didn't exist. We talked about, as youth, heat stroke and things like that. You shouldn't be thinking about that. You should be able to go into your neighborhood and get under a tree. We didn't have air conditioning back then. I'm not saying that, you know, things weren't great, because Pontchartrain Park is a great community, but we were all aware that on the north side of Robert E. Lee, there was more landscaping, there were more shade trees, there were bird sanctuaries, and we weren't welcome to go. So what we're doing through this reforestation plan, and thank you to Sustaining Our Urban Landscape for pointing out 5 different neighborhoods, pilot programs where we have a tremendous disadvantage in those communities relative to overlay. But we're addressing something that I guess you just got to start addressing it. It's going to be a 100-year plan. I'm glad to see that it's starting now, and I look forward to your working with our citizenry to continue to educate as to the value of tree canopy, and to also get people to volunteer. I'll add to this that I want you to focus on what we can encourage people to do themselves. If it's not going to be done necessarily in an organized part of this plan, what they can do for themselves to help not only their homes, but their communities, and that we want to gather the information so that we'll know trees in certain places. So I just want to thank you for the work that you've done. Recognize that it's a long-term plan, but as you look at those maps and you look at some beautiful communities in our city, there is no reason that our community should not look like St. Charles Avenue, the Bird Streets and all. And just think, it's a little bit late, but we can build for the future. But just think how things would be different in our city if some time ago we were able to not have in place, or we didn't have in place, those discriminatory measures which prevented us from having St. Charles Avenue type looking communities all throughout our city. Where would we be now? So 100 years from now, maybe medicine will have changed and I'll still be around. But if I'm not, I'm just pleased that these works that we're doing today are going to make a difference in our city, and that in certain neighborhoods, our city will look a lot different 50 to 100 years from now. So thank you.
Thank you. And I should mention, all of you on the council know this, that the Pontchartrain Park idea was actually Councilman Green's idea. He said, let's plant a tree in front of every house in my home neighborhood. We ended up getting funding to plant as many trees as we want in front of each house. So it's been a phenomenal project, but that was really the proof of concept that inspired these pilot plans. So, and it's, I'm not going to say easy because there's always challenges, but you have the vision, you do the planting plan, and you plant it. So, so it's been fantastic, and we're really excited to get going on these pilots.
And I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if I can mention one thing, because we've emphasized Pontchartrain Park a lot, and that's important. But you have planted in the 7th Ward. You have planted on the West Bank as you're planting this Saturday.
Old Algiers Riverview.
Old Algiers Riverview. So there has been an attempt throughout the city. Yes, I am pleased that the Pontchartrain Park community held a special place, and that was because of something that I wanted to see happen. But I'm so pleased that in different communities, the tree planting is going to make a difference, and that you've done so already. Thank you.
Thank you. The one big holdup to our work right now is road work. So if there's anything you can do about that in these pilot neighborhoods, that would be helpful, because we want to start on Holly Grove, but we can't because the roads are just torn up. Same in Pontchartrain Park. We're at a standstill right now because we can't do any more of the streets until road work is done.
Yeah,
For what it's worth.
we are trying to get there, and unfortunately I have to run for a press conference.
Oh,
And
that's
I'm
okay.
turning the reins over to Councilmember Jeruso for public comment.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Burley, for
Ms.
your
Burley.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
All right, 3 comments cards, Mr. Marsala, Pastor Williams, and then Mr. Burnside.
Thank you all. And thank you for what you're doing. I've been involved I was a wildlife photographer for many years, and that's how I actually got started. I was on our Park and Rec Commission. What I wanted to say today is I'm in favor, as you know, Joe, we've been talking a lot about West End Lakeshore Park. There's 25 heritage oak trees on there. And the conceptual drawings would be to remove those trees to put the restaurants there. So I'd prefer that we see that. I've actually on our website, retiefpark.org, shown what it could look like if we plant ball cypress, because when the winds blow right now, we get 3-4 inches of water on the streets, and having those ball cypress planted in that area would be a great way to absorb a lot of that water. Also, we have 400 feet on the Lake Pontchartrain. It'd be a great way to use some of the funds that you have, because there's 3-to-1 matching right now from the Joe Biden infrastructure plan that would help us further develop that as an educational opportunity to teach about climate change and let residents know and students know that we need to be addressed planting trees throughout Louisiana and New Orleans. So right now, those funds are only available for 5 years. There's only about 4 years left. It's 10 million a year for 5 years, and hopefully we might look at reforesting West End Lakeshore Park as opposed to developing it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Pastor Williams, and then Mr. Burnside.
First, giving honor to God and to our mayor, to the councilman. I just want us to remember Malia subdivision when we putting together our list of beautification. It's in the east, it's right over the Danziger Bridge. And we get lost in the mix because a Pontchartrain Park has the college, the golf course, Walmart, and that's Councilman Green's district. And so they feel like when they do a lot for that area, they've covered that area, that district. But we have been forgotten, and Malia's that short little area between Diamond Road and the interstate from Chef to the wire. And so when you're putting together your plans for New Orleans East, that is the entryway into the East. And you know, when you go in your living room, you want it to look nice. You know, you can throw all the other stuff together in the bedrooms and other rooms, but you want your entryway to look nice. And so when you're putting together your plan, just consider the Malia area in New Orleans East.
Can you spell that?
M-E-L-I-A, Malia. And I'm the vice president of the association. And, you know, Ms. LaVaughn, she's the president. We have our board for the association. We have everything in place. We're developing now our economic development portion so we can receive the monies that's been coming to our area that has been redirected. But anyway, let me say a prayer and then I'm gonna sit down. Lord, we just thank you, God, for this day. We thank you for your many blessings, God. Lord, we thank you, Lord Jesus, that all you have done for our city, God. Lead us and guide us, strengthen us in the areas that we're weak in Jesus' name, God. Lord, we need you like never before in this hour. We need you, God, to come help us to strengthen us against drugs, oh God, guns and incarceration, illiteracy, poverty, in the mighty, miraculous, most powerful, excellent name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. And I wanted to thank those brothers. They came in our community in the rain and picked up trash. Those guys that were sitting here, what
Sage Michael and his group.
yes,
They're
and
very good.
picked up trash and blighted properties in the rain. I wanted to thank them.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Thank you.
I'll give
Thank
you my
Council.
number if you don't mind waiting a few minutes.
Yes.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. All right, Mr. Burnside.
Michael Eric Burnside, 2215 Felicity. As some of you know, I don't drive cars and therefore I walk around a lot and see things that people who drive by in cars don't necessarily really twig to. So there's the post-planting problem, right? So you've got all these trees, but unfortunately, a lot of them are dying and they're dying for different reasons. One of the reasons is people never come back. And so they've got 3 metal stakes and they've got 3 metal wires and they're wrapped around the trunk, and 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years later, when nobody's still come back, they've throttled the tree. They've cut all the bark and they've cut it all right down and the tree just dies. It's not always wire. Sometimes it's those thick straps that don't rot and don't rot away, and they're there 6, 7 years later, and they're cutting into the trunk to the point where the tree is either stunted or dead. So nobody comes back and takes the metal poles away. Nobody comes back and cuts the wires away. Nobody comes back and takes the straps away, and the tree just dies. So I go along and I cut a bunch of stuff. Sometimes it makes me feel good and sometimes it doesn't. On the other hand, since we got a little bit of green light, trees on private property, you've got major problems. People just chopping down trees left and right. The vacant lot beside me got 2 nice new $350,000 houses on them because they chopped down a nice, so I don't know, I'm going to guess a couple 100-year-old pecan tree. And then there's the Peanut Park. The Peanut Park was planted with cypress, unfortunately, at 1702 Simon Boulevard, and it was private land. So even though it was a post-Katrina planters peanut park little thing going on, the people who own the land decided to bulldoze everything, and it's now a flat piece of sand. So there's really no respect for trees in the culture. So not only do we need a clean culture, we need a tree loving one.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Thank you, Susanna, so much for your presentation. We appreciate it. And I think the comments today demonstrate the point that you're trying to make about the need for more planting of trees. All right, with that, up next is Director Karen.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Giarrusso, Councilmember King. Okay. So I'm here on behalf of Parks and Parkways as the director to discuss a few initiatives that we are currently undertaking and planning to undertake in 2023. Just quickly to touch base on them, we'll go over our current tree planting initiatives, our forestry management initiatives, also the Park and Rec master plan that I'd like to mention, as well as green space projects that are under construction, our bond funded bid package, our partnerships, and possible green space creation projects that we're working on. And also I'm happy to tie into any questions or comments that you or the public have as it relates to the reforestation plan to the extent that I can at this point. Just to touch briefly before I go into our tree planting projects that we're currently working on. The administration over the last, in our 2022 budget year and 2023 budget year as well, through a combination of bond funded initiatives and our regular budget, have significantly increased funding for both tree planting and tree maintenance through an increase in heavy equipment for the forestry division, as well as various bond funded initiatives. And so our first slide is addressing those bond funded initiatives, and as well as the tree planting partner award that is going into its second year. And I'm pretty sure that both of you council members are aware the citywide tree planting project is a bond funded project in which we are currently planting over 1,100 trees citywide in every city council district. And to develop those plans, our team has analyzed data from citywide tree inventory and the department's field data of recent tree losses, with the goal being to diversify the canopy by planting a mix of 32 different native and adapted species. Again, this is a bond-funded initiative. Twin Shores is the contractor that was selected, and the planting started last month and will continue through March. The other component of our tree planting efforts is the citywide tree planting partner award, which is a $250,000 award granted to our 5 tree planting partners that we have worked with over the past 5 years: Healthy Community Services and Advocacy, the NOLA Tree Project, Soul, Tremendous Love, and Waterwise Gulf South. And this is taking a different approach with the council from last year's budget and the administration into this year's budget as the award was renewed, to where rather than planting directly as a department or relying solely on nonprofits with their individual fundraising, we are directly supporting those nonprofit efforts to plant trees. So with the citywide tree planting project, planting over 1,100 trees, and with the tree planting award, we'll plant close to 800 trees from last year's budget and moving into next year. And again, to reiterate, this is a map that we can go into detail. I'll have a list in the next slide, identifying the areas across the city where the planting project is planting, mostly on the right of way, but also in parks and playgrounds. And the map shows all 5 council districts. In certain areas, there are a significant number of more trees being planted. For example, Michoud Boulevard was just completed in New Orleans East, and that's a total of 217 trees that were planted along that neutral ground. That's been completed along with Wall Boulevard, McDonough Park, and St. Claude and North Claiborne, also in District E. And then currently in progress, we have Tulane Avenue, Rampart Street, Louisiana, and Jefferson Avenue. And this is a list, again, to break down the plantings across council districts. We can go into detail at a later time if any of you have any questions. And this is one example of our partners. The NOLA Tree Project recently completed the planting of 70 trees, staked with tree guards and watering along Vermilion Boulevard in Gentilly. This being an area that for years had no trees on the neutral ground. But in coordinating with Public Works and Sewage and Water Board, we've been given the green light to move forward with this planting. And we as a department are thrilled to support our nonprofit partners directly to make these projects possible. Also, in addition to planting, and again, this speaks to the reforestation plan, where it's not just about planting, but it's also about forestry management initiatives. The Department of Parks and Parkways, through the administration's fund balance, has received and is moving forward with $3.4 million dedicated to reducing the forestry backlog. So, as I said, in addition to planting, we are also working to reduce the forestry backlog whenever residents call with 301 requests to have trees in the city right-of-way, be it the neutral ground and parks, playgrounds, or the right-of-way, the planting strip in front of their house trimmed. That gets entered into 301, and this money is directly going to reducing that backlog. So over the course of the next 2 years, we will have approximately 1,600 trims and 250 removals in working with our contracted partner. Additionally, we have a coordinated effort with ITI to improve how we track trees that are planted in the ground. We have the field data collection app that is going out to those partners, and they will be able to give the GIS coordinates so that we can add to our citywide tree database, which was completed in 2019, that identifies trees that are planted in the public right-of-way. And just to touch on the citywide park and recreation master plan, this is currently underway and is being managed by the Mayor's Office of Youth and Families through the Board Commission in partnership with an array of public agencies and our community partners. And the plan focuses on expanding equitable access to parks and green spaces, as well as improving environmental resilience through the park system. And again, this initiative, the grant was received through the NRPA, the National Recreation and Park Association, and in coordination with the park partners, which is City Park, Audubon, NORD, and Parks and Parkways. That came about as a result of the millage redistribution in 2019. And just to touch briefly on what the master plan addresses, it will focus on an engagement plan where there are park ambassadors, focus groups, ultimately an advisory committee, and community workshops and surveys, with the anticipated completion of that master plan at some point in August of this year. And if you want more information, it's available at youthandfamilies@nola.gov. As I mentioned, the focus groups are convening next month, and the surveys and the continuation of the plan creation will continue in the coming months. All right, and on to green space improvement projects that are under construction. So we currently have the Joseph Bartholomew Municipal Golf Course storm shelters, combination storm shelters and restrooms. That construction is at substantial completion, which we're thrilled about. The picture in the lower left-hand corner shows the current state of those storm shelter bathrooms. So there will be 2 spaced at various points at the Joe Bartholomew Golf Course. We also have bond-funded Washington Square improvements that you can identify, that you can read here, focused to improve drainage, walkways, plantings, and furnishings, and soil remediation. Also, we're working with RTA to relocate the George Washington statue from the New Orleans Public Library's main library to Washington Square Park. Also, we have work that is being done on Armstrong Park to repair the lagoons. That is under contract as well. And then we're currently bidding for Jackson Square work to replace Hurricane Ida damaged lighting and benches, as well as repairing the granite benches on St. Roch Art Walk. And we're working with our partners at Friends of the Lafitte Greenway and NORD to restore the bioswales along the Lafitte Greenway. And that will allow for the bioswales along the Greenway that for years have been overgrown and unmaintained to have an opportunity for NORD and Friends of Lafitte Greenway to restore them. And so we're working directly with them on that. And on to upcoming green space improvement projects. So we initially had a $4 million pool of citywide green space enhancement bond funding. And as I mentioned, we spent about $1 million of that on the citywide tree planting project. And so the remaining balance is going towards a variety of improvements that focus on long-standing infrastructure improvements to parks across the city, whether it's concrete repair, replacing trees, adding benches, trash can work, replacement, down to flagpole replacement at McDonough Memorial Park. And we have listed here the parks that we've identified. We're currently working on that package so that it can go out to bid in the coming months. We have a base bid, we have ad alternates as well, and we're working, our landscape architects are working to put together that bid package so that we can get that out at some point this year. We're also coordinating with capital projects to develop plans for the multipurpose fields at Brechtel Golf Course. Councilmember King, we recently met with you to address that, and we'll continue to work with you on that. Also, our green space partnership projects. We continue our work with the Hellas Foundation to permit and approve the Borgia Street Sculpture exhibition, the upcoming Prospect 6 New Orleans, the Bayou Road Streetscape, and Andrew Calliope Park restoration and enhancement project. We're working with the Bayou Road Business Association and Broad Community Connections for a CEA that will revitalize that corridor, as well as our street tree planting projects with our various partners, in this case, Soul and Pontchartrain Park in the Algiers neighborhoods, and then our tree giveaways in partnership with the NOLA Tree Project. And the last slide covers the potential for green space creation. And listed here are a number of projects ranging from small triangular neutral grounds, such as 2553 St. Bernard Avenue, to much larger projects. There's Willow Creek in New Orleans East, where we are looking to either open up public space to the public and make them additional passive parks, or revitalize and restore smaller spaces that have are in need of sidewalk restoration, the addition of benches and trees. We're also working with Councilmember Harris and the property management at the Keller Center, and looking at adding green space to that as that comes back online, in partnership with community members to reopen the Keller Center, and adding green space in the rear section of that facility. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Director Karam. Any questions? Any online comments? None? Okay. We have 2 public comment cards. Yes, Mr. Marsala and Mr. Burnside. Yeah. I think Mr. Marsala clocked in first, Mr. Burns. He did. I know. I just. Yes, go ahead. Thank you all.
I'll look forward to hearing your comments. I'm learning a lot from everything you have to say. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for putting us on the agenda. I'll add some information that I've learned over the past, I guess I'm shorter, few weeks. I believe there's 63 million acres nationwide of open space. There's called the Alliance for Open Space Trust. There's a big agenda nationwide to keep open space. And we have our planning commission rezoned in 2015, 4.3 acres of West End Lakeshore Park to mixed use. And it seems that goes against everything we've been hearing today about the need to keep open space and plant trees in parks. Why would we give up something that we have when we're looking to add new parks and we're turning one over to restaurants, when the feasibility study said those areas were saturated with restaurants already? The residents would prefer to keep the open space. I've met with Senator Cassidy twice. He's talked about that 50 million that's available, that it's only 10 million a year for 5 years. We've lost 1 year. I'd like to see that move. There are a lot of nonprofits, the Pontchartrain Conservatory, the Audubon Society, and other avenues to partner with nonprofits to take this and make it a wildlife habitat and use it for education on climate change and how we need to plant more trees throughout the state because there's a huge pelican colony there. Students could come and see it, and it'd be great to inspire people to do some of the other tree planting that we've heard about today that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Burnside.
Michael Burnside, 2215 Felicity. So I don't normally get things done in these chambers. I usually try to just make my comments, but I did many years ago convince Councilman Banks to pass a small change in the truck routes of the city, which caused me great joy. I did something. Seems I've done something a second time. I'm not 100% sure I've done something, but I should point out for transparency purposes that 1701 Simon Boulevard is my hope and joy because it's right down the street from my house. And it's a problem with a potential for being good, not merely just a potential for being not a problem, but actual good things could happen there. So I'm encouraged, I think is a euphemism, to see 10 grand there, even though 10 grand's just hopefully, I don't know, design or something, because I don't think 10 grand will buy you much of a fence. But whatever the details are, I look forward to talking to the good director after we meet here. I want to point out the math doesn't quite match up. We just had a lady here from Seoul saying that we were inexpensive for planting trees compared to the nation average. And I don't like relying on my memory anymore, but I think she was saying something around $15 a tree or some incredibly small amount. But if we take the $250,000 and divide it by less than 1,000 trees, we're paying $250 a tree now here in this presentation. And to trim them costs about 1,700 each tree. So I don't know how this is all going to work out if we want a couple million trees around here, but however it does work out, better than having no trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Yes. And we look forward to the continued work of Park and Parkways and your partners as well. So thank you all very much. All right. I think with that, we are concluded and we will just stand at ease till the next quality of life meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.